Alright, welcome back to WMMA Now with your host Chuck Stevenson. So if you've followed this channel for a little while, then you know that I am a huge supporter of the women's atomweight division. And if you're one of those that have been following us for quite a while, then you know that pretty much since the inception of this channel, I have been calling for a UFC atomweight division. Every year for the past 3 years, I've done a series called A Case for UFC Atomweight. This year I'm doing things a little bit differently. Usually what's the first part is going to come in a few more weeks. I'm waiting on someone to get back to me with some numbers. So this is going to be part 2 a little early. Now normally I make 2 lists of 10 fighters that the UFC should sign if they start an atomweight division. First would be a list of 10 up-and-comers, and then a list of 10 of the top fighters. This year I've reduced it to just a list of 10 fighters, 5 fighters in each category. And I did this to reduce to avoid repeating myself too much. So this is 2 lists of 5. The first half of these fighters is going to be the up-and-comers, like fighters who are younger in age or are just getting started in their career and are looked at as prospects. The second list is going to be basically the top of the division, fighters who, you can't really call yourself a good atomweight division if you don't sign these fighters. So this list is based on if the UFC, of course, were to start an atomweight division and were to start shelling out the money, no expenses spared. All right, so here's a list of 10 atomweights the UFC should sign, beginning with 5 up-and-comers. Okay, so first up, number 1, and these are in any order, but first up, number 1, Alicia Zappitella. Alicia is 25 years old. She has a record of 6-2. She stands 4 feet 11 inches or 149.86 centimeters tall. She has a current streak of 1 win. Out of her wins on her record, she has 1 submission and 5 decisions. Now that's a low percentage of only 17%, but that doesn't really tell the whole story. Her last fight is a win over Kelly D'Angelo at Invicta 39. Now the reason I put Alicia Zappitella on here is, she's a strong wrestler, and the women's divisions normally lack strong wrestlers. So she's a strong wrestler, but she also has heavy hands. First time I got to really see one of her fights live, she dropped, who did she drop? She dropped her opponent a couple times. So she has a strong wrestler, she has heavy hands, and hey, she has the looks. And that kind of matters, okay? You hate to think that it does. It shouldn't. But it definitely does not hurt. I will say that one weakness she has is that she needs to learn how to slip her opponent's jab a little better. She's lost twice to opponents who exercised a strong jab. Okay, next up, Elise Anderson. Elise is 25 years old. She has a record of 5-1. She stands 5 feet 5 inches, 165 centimeters tall. So she's a little tall for an atomweight. She's on the taller end. She is on a current win streak of 2 fights. Out of her 5 wins, 2 are by KO or TKO, 1's by submission, and 2 are by decision, for a winning percentage of, a finish percentage of 60%. Her last fight was a split decision win over Katie Saul at Invicta 36. Now, I included her because she's young and she's exciting. And she is very big on the UFC starting an atomweight division. She's trained at the Performance Center a number of times, the UFC PI in Vegas. So she is very big on pushing for a UFC atomweight division. One thing I will say about Elise, however, is that she's only fought 1 time each in the last, I believe, 3 years. So she needs to be a little more active. Okay, next is Lindsay Van Zandt. Lindsay is 26 years old. She has a record of 7-3. She stands 5 feet 2 inches, 157 centimeters tall. She currently is coming off a loss to Reina at Ryzen 20. Out of her 7 wins, 5 are by KO TKO, 1 is by submission, and 1 decision. That's an 85% finish rate. Very high. And I included Lindsay for several reasons as well. First up, she is a good all-rounder. She can do a little bit of everything. I also included her because she's willing to take risks. 2 times she moved up to a catchweight to face Reina, who is a very dangerous striker. First time she did in Bellator, she won. Then she went all the way over to Japan, faced Reina in Ryzen under a skill set she'd never competed in before, a rule set I should say. She took the loss, but hey, she took it in stride. So she is willing to take risks. And then finally, she's adorable. Okay, you ever watch her fight? You ever listen to her post-fight interviews or any interview with her? She's just adorable. She's very likable as a fighter. So that's why you should include UFC should sign Lindsey Van Zandt. Next up, one of my personal faves, Jong-Eun Park. Park is 23 years old. She is 7-6 as a pro, which is very experienced for a young age. She stands 5 feet 2 inches, 157 centimeters tall. She is currently on a 3-fight win streak. And out of her 7 wins, 3 are by KO or TKO, 2 are by sub, 2 are by decision. That's a 72% finish percentage. So very strong as well. Her last fight was a KO win over Yuri Shim at Road FC 57 in the main event. So she's already main eventing. And I put Park on here because, one, she's very experienced for her age. That's 13 fights, and she's only 23 years old. She is growing in her fight IQ, and recently she is becoming a solid finisher. Her last 3 fights are by finish, so she is doing very well. She's growing very well as a fighter. One downside to her is that because of the amount of losses, she doesn't look as so pretty on paper, record-wise. But she's also been a victim of some really unfair matchmaking in the past, particularly at the start of her career. Okay, and then finally, for the list of 5 up-and-comers, is Kelly D'Angelo. Now, Kelly's 33. She's the oldest fighter on the first half of this list. She has a record of 4-3. She stands 5 feet 2 inches, 157 centimeters tall. She is currently coming off a loss to Alicia Zapatella, who's also on this list, at Invicta 39, losing by unanimous decision. Of her 4 wins, 1 is by KO TKO, 1 is by sub, 2 are by decision. So, not great, but hardly terrible either, for as far as a finish percentage. I put Kelly D'Angelo on here because, you know, she's a late starter, only getting into MMA around 30 years of age, but she is a fast learner. Also, she has an interesting X factor in that she is a firefighter, and that's easy to market. Okay, everybody likes firefighters. I mean, unless you're a police officer, maybe, I don't know. But I mean, nobody just likes firefighters, so it's easy to market her as with that. Alright, so that was the list of the 5 up-and-comers. This next half of the list is going to be 5 fighters that you can't really say you have the best atomweights in the world if you don't have these 5. Now, these are in no real particular order, but I decided to start with the top. So, starting at the top. Number 1, Sahi Ham. Ham is 33 years old. She's 23-8 as a professional. She stands 5 feet 2 inches, 158 centimeters tall. She currently is on a 6-fight winning streak. Her last fight, she's coming off a split decision win over Ayaka Hamasaki at Ryzen 20, capturing the Ryzen Super Atomweight title. She has 4 wins by KO or TKO, 3 wins by submission, 16 by decision. So that's a low finish percentage of 20%. I will say, however, that out of her last 6 wins, the 6 current fight winning streak, 4 of them are by finish. So she is starting to finish her fights, even if it's at this late juncture of her career. You know, Ham is, you know, why wouldn't you try to sign her? She's #1 in the world. She's the Road FC champ. She's the Ryzen champ. She's the lineal Jewels and Deep Jewels champ. She's the lineal Invicta FC champ. Okay, so she either is the current champion or the lineal champion of every atomweight division that is worth a damn. So there, I mean, you'd be an idiot not to sign her. I mean, she's the one fighter that if you're going to start an atomweight division, you throw the money at her. And she's a striker to boot. Alright, so that leads me down to, or over to, the next one on this list, Ayaka Hamasaki. Hamasaki is 38 years old. She has a record of 19-3. She stands 5 feet 2 inches, 158 centimeters tall. She is coming off a loss via split decision to Sahi Ham at Ryzen 20 back on New Year's Eve. Of her 19 wins, 3 are by KO or TKO, 8 are by submission, 8 are by decision. So for a finishing percentage of 58%. Again, not great, but not bad either. She's right there in the middle. Hamasaki is currently #2 in the world. She was #1, just lost for the first time at atomweight. So she is still #2, and she was a lone reigning champion there. She was the Invicta FC champion. Never actually lost that title. Gave it up to go back to Japan, fight at Ryzen, where she became the inaugural Ryzen champion. Then she just lost the title to Ham. So, of her 3 losses, 2 of them are up at strawweight. She only just lost for the first time as an atomweight. So again, she's another one. She'd be hard to coax into coming out of Japan to fight. But I think if you gave her enough money, she'd do it. Plus, when she was a strawweight, the UFC was her goal. So maybe if UFC started an atomweight division, she'd want to go there. She's just one of those fighters that even though she's getting up there in age, she's 38, she really isn't slowing down. So if you can get her, she'd one of the ones that you would want. Okay, next up, Ashley Cummins. Ashley Cummins is 32 years old. She has a record of 7-5. She stands 5 feet 3 inches tall, 161 centimeters. She is coming off a loss to Jin Yu Fry at Invicta FC 39, where she challenged for the title. She lost that fight via unanimous decision. Of her 7 wins, 2 are by submission, 5 are by decision, so she has a little bit of a low finish rate of only 29%. Why would you want Ashley Cummins? Well, let's see. She's the most recent title challenger in Invicta, and she is a solid all-rounder. Also, she has an X factor in that she is a police officer. You can definitely market that. Also, even though her record isn't that great, 7-5, most of those losses are up at strawweight. So she's been doing very well since coming down to atomweight. So, you know, Invicta is one of the main feeders of UFC for the women, and Ashley is at the top of the atomweight division right now in Invicta. So you definitely would want to sign her. Next up, Kana Asakura. Kana is 22 years old. She has a record of 16-4, which, good lord, that is a lot of fights for 22 years old. She stands 5 feet 2 inches, 158 centimeters tall. She is currently on a 2-fight winning streak. Her last fight was a submission win due to Kimura over Jamie Hinshaw at Bellator 239, the Bellator Japan event. Of her 16 wins, 6 are by submission, 10 are by decision. So that's a low finish rate of only 38%. However, obviously she's a submission machine, and people like submissions. Okay, people love knockouts more, but they also like submissions. You'd want to sign her because, look, she's the youngest person on this list by a year. Out of the entire 10 fighters on this list, she's the youngest by a year. However, she is already a top contender in this division. She fought for the inaugural Ryzen Super Atomweight title. She is a solid wrestler. She's been learning to wrestle pretty much since the time she could walk. Her dad was her coach. She's just an all-around solid fighter. Her most recent losses only came to the strongest, two of the strongest grapplers in the division, in Ayaka Hamasaki and Miyu Yamamoto, who is a former World Wrestling Champ. So she is a solid fighter, and she's only 22. So she's got a long way to go. Now finally on this list, Tomo Maesawa. Maesawa is 32 years old. She has a record of 13-10. She stands 4 feet 11 inches, 150 centimeters tall. So she is tied as the shortest with Alicia Zapatella. She is coming off a win over Emi Tomomatsu at Deep Jewels 26, defending the Deep Jewels title via unanimous decision. Of her 13 wins, 2 are by KO, TKO, 2 are by submission, 9 are by decision for a 30% finish rate. Kind of low, not the greatest, I'll admit. So why is a fighter with a record of 13-10 on this list? Well, she's the current Deep Jewels champ. She has a wealth of experience. Plus, she's very likable, okay? She's very small in size, but when you combine that with the dogged determination that she shows in her fights, it makes her, she's very endearing as a fighter. Also, look, there are 2 all-women promotions in the world right now. There's Invicta and there's Deep Jewels. So why wouldn't you want the champion of one of those promotions? I mean, why wouldn't you? So you definitely would want Tomo Maesawa because she's one of the champions. Alright, so that's my list of 10 fighters that the UFC should sign if they were to create an atomweight division. Now, of course, there are some fighters I left off this list. For example, Jin Yu Fry. Jin Yu Fry was, up until recently, the Invicta FC atomweight champion. However, she missed weight for the first time her last fight, lost her title on a scale. Now she is seriously discussing moving up to strawweight. Therefore, I decided not to include her on this list because if she moves up to strawweight. Also, it's not a good look to lose your title on a scale, even if it's the first time you ever miss weight. You don't want to do it in a title fight. I didn't include several fighters in the UFC who currently fight at strawweight, but could probably make atomweight, such as Loma Lookboonmee just moved up from atomweight to fight there. Carla Esparza says she could make atomweight. There's a couple other fighters on the smaller end at strawweight. 1, they're already signed. 2, I wanted to keep this to fighters who are outside the UFC currently. So that's it. 10 fighters. 5 up-and-comers, 5 at the top of their game. Let me know what you think of this list in the comments down below. Of course, likes are always appreciated. Hey, what are you waiting for? Subscribe to WMMA now, the best damn women's mixed martial arts dedicated platform on YouTube. Don't forget to hit that bell for notifications. Be a lot cooler if you did. And we'll see you next time.